Thank you. Well, it's great to be here, great to be on stage again. I'm really excited to be the closing talk of this morning. I'm usually in this spot where you have to make a joke about food and blocking access to it. And I decided to not talk about food at all. But then 2 weeks ago, I ran into this. I'm the cook at home. I'm not always a very inspired cook. Sometimes I'm just lazy and I buy a bag of lettuce, of salad. It's washed. You can just open it and use it. But it says 25% less plastic. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. And then on second thought, but what does it mean? Did they just waste a lot of plastic before and now they decided to reduce it by 25%? Did they outsource all their plastic-consuming activities to claim to be better on a sustainability point of view? Did they calculate it already in 2019 and now happen to be there claiming 25%? Or is it more like a wishful calculation back from where we are today? It's a nice claim they make. It's awesome that they show it. They do care about sustainability, ESG, the climate change, everything. But what does it mean? And I'm apparently not the only one with such questions. If you followed the news last week, you saw that a few banks got a visit too with questions about their ESG claims on the funds that are supposed to be green, but apparently they also don't really know where to get the data from or how to interpret it. Well, perhaps it's also wishful thinking. In the end, these ESG data, they come forth usually from Excel sheets mailed around once a year to complete and then poured into a nice magazine. So perhaps it's not that easy to judge whether something is actually green or not. And well, I saw a few people laugh, but it's the same discussion with the blockchain or the Bitcoin power consumption, where you also see the strangest comparisons, like here with the Pizza Tower, for example. But what is being calculated now? I saw research last week, thanks Matthew, where the Bitcoin blockchain was proven to be 60% or 60 times even more efficient on power consumption than the traditional financial system. And then you see that to calculate everything for TradFi, even the commute of all the employees worldwide was taken into account, while for Bitcoin it was only the miners that were calculated. So you can do a lot of things with these numbers. It's good to see that there is attention for it, but in the end, I'm a bit more curious to know where the data comes from and whether it's good data, because if we don't know where we're going to, perhaps we're not going in the right direction. And that's not the thing we want to do today with climate change, while sustainability is so high on the radar. So I want to address today 4 topics. First of all, a very little bit about ESG and sustainability. I heard you already had a nice session about that yesterday, so I hope I don't cover too much twice. Then a few words about trustworthy data and the role of enterprise blockchain to get that data. And then 2 use cases that we're working on. One is in production, live, and another one is still being built. So, well, let's get started. A few things about sustainability. First, ESG sustainability. It's not entirely the same. The S in ESG is for social, not sustainability. They do relate to each other. ESG, it's a risk framework. It's for investors, for lenders to judge what the impact could be of external factors on a company, while sustainability is the other way around. It's the way out. It's the impact that the company has on the environment. Do they add more value than they take? Do they deplete resources or actually make sure that for the years to come, there still will be an earth we can all live on? So not entirely the same, still related. Then if you want to report on it, you have a wide offering of frameworks to report of things you could do, could calculate, could validate. I saw a report from McKinsey, their ESG report. They used 4 frameworks. They validated it with 2 companies. That one other company checked the results, which literally means, as they described it, that the data they have meets the data on the document they make. So it's still a little bit messy. There is some progress. They are talking to each other to build one set of data and guidance on how to measure it. And you also have to take into account there is legislation upcoming. Most likely non-financial reporting will be there somewhere in the future. There is also in Germany the Lieferkettengesetz, in English the Due Diligence Supply Chain Act, which forces companies over 3,000 employees to know their supply chain upstream and to the end. They have to know everything, they have to track more, they have to act if something happens. So there are some changes coming, and I hope it will change for the better. And then if you figured out what you want to do, sustainability, ESG, which data to report, where to get it from, then we think, as Fujitsu, that it's a good thing to push this data to an enterprise blockchain solution and to do it as fast as possible. Because when you measure data at the spot, no matter how, whether it's manually or digitally or with IoT devices and edge computing, the moment you measure it, it's just data. The temperature in this room, perhaps even the people with COVID-19, it's just data. If in 2 weeks we're all sick, well, then we know there was a super spreader, but that's insights, they come later. First you have the data, put it on a ledger as soon as possible, it becomes immutable, it's secure. You can share it with other people with fine-grained access rights on top. So we think it's a good thing to do. And now with smart contracts, you build insights, you build the reporting that is required. And while we think it's a good idea, perhaps you don't have to take my word for it. Robert Kaplan, or Bob Kaplan as some might know him, the guy behind the Balanced Scorecard, wrote a report in 2021, How to Fix ESG Reporting. And he says, look guys, it's really complex, this ESG thing, because all those elements, they have an impact on each other. Just imagine you have a board and 50% of the board members are female. Amazing on your governance, you're really hitting the marks there. And then they decide to fire half the employees and replace them with robots. Well, that will be detrimental for your social score. But how does it compound and what is the net result? He says, take it easy, just measure something you probably already do, like the greenhouse gas emissions, which you probably track for sustainability. Start with scope 1, aim for scope 2, try to reach scope 3, and just track it. Whatever you have, just track it, and then we will start building an e-liability system. It's basically an accounting system, like we know already today of accounting, but then focused on these measurements, where they trickle down with checks and balances until, at the end, for every product, you know exactly what the CO2 emission was to make the thing you just bought. That's the idea he has, and he says, look, if we do this, this will connect a whole lot of parties, we'll gather a whole lot of data, and to make it cheaper, to cut down on audit costs and accounting costs, use a blockchain. So if you don't trust me or like me, maybe you like Bob Kaplan, you can trust or like him. We think it's a good idea anyway. So you need data to do something, otherwise you just have an opinion. I promised you a bit about trustworthy data in enterprise blockchain. We think this trustworthy data is important because with right data, or with any data you have even today, you make decisions, you build reports, you share it with other people, and most of the data is not questioned at all. We think it might be good to just add a layer of trust underneath to your customers, so you can show them what you're actually doing, to your compliance team, so that they know that the data you report is actually true. And perhaps even as a catalyst for innovation, if you have a fine-grained view on what happens in your processes, you can start innovating. I have an example of that later on. Then, enterprise blockchain, it's not like the Bitcoin blockchain, alas, so I will tell you a little bit more about it. For me, the big division in a blockchain is between public-private ledgers and permissionless permissioned ledgers. A public ledger, that's a bit like going to the Rue d'Anspach here. You just take your car, you go there, you walk around, you can drink, you can talk to people. You can do everything that is allowed within the protocol. If you start punching people in the face or shooting them in the legs, then you will be removed. If you just behave like normal people do, everything will be okay, but it's a public place. Nobody can stop you from going there. Private ledger or place, that's a bit like here. If you walk past the building, you don't know there are people here and that they are doing things. If you walk in, somebody is asking you, hello, who are you? What are you doing here? How can I help you? That's private. It's with identity and somebody who wants to know who you are and what you're coming to do. The other axe is permissionless permissioned. Permissionless, it's a bit like anarchy, but not in a negative way. Everybody's equal for the law. And then permissioned, it's everybody's still equal, but some are more equal than others because they have the right to give other people rights, like read rights, write rights. If you look at those 4 crossings in the left upper corner, that's where the Bitcoin sits, public, permissionless ledger. If you want to be a part of it, you buy a Bitcoin, you install ransomware in a hospital. Everything is okay to get this Bitcoin, and then you're part of the system. You want to get out, you sell it, and every transaction is public. As of the 3rd of January 2009, you can validate everything yourself. That's public and permissionless. Completely the opposite is where most enterprise blockchain projects are. That's where most enterprises are too. That's private and permissioned. Behind closed doors, connected to each other, of course, not in their own basement, and with access rights. If there is a supervisory authority involved, they get read rights all over the place. If you're collaborating with your customer, you give them read and write rights on their own data, and they can also see that other participants are doing things in the network, but they can't see what, for example. For that, you need identity and access rights, so you end up with a private permissioned ledger. I have to be fair, quite a few enterprise projects are moving up to public permission ledgers, which means they share more data to the public, but still hold permissions on who can add data to the ledger. EnergyWeb, for example, is a public permissioned blockchain application for the energy sector. Now, yeah, there is this edge case, but I don't know any example of that, so let's leave that for what it is. A few technologies, private permissioned ledgers, then we're talking about Hyperledger Fabric, R3 Scorda, and the public permissioned ledgers, that's Ethereum Enterprise Alliance, Quorum, but also EY's own blockchain experiment, Nightfall, version 3 already, I think. It goes fast. Okay. This is a quote from the CTO from R3, and I think it really, really makes sense as to when and why you need a blockchain. He's also the guy behind WYSIWYS. What you see is what I see, which is a very accurate description of how a blockchain in the end works. Good. 2 use cases. First one, TextTracer. It's a Dutch startup, scale-up. It's a company that is focused on the textile industry, and they had 2 challenges. They wanted to work on sustainability and to work on marketing. Wonder marketing, well, if you look at all the messages you see in a clothing shop, it's a bit like the 25% plastic reduction on the bag. Everything is okay, it's fair trade, no bleach used, 100% cotton, no pesticides, no child labor, all on little labels and tags, and nothing to validate. So you just have to take their word for it. And TextTracer wanted to change that. So we built them blockchain solution that doesn't change the supply chain. It just takes data from the supply chain and positions that on the blockchain. They take, for example, pictures of the field when and where the cotton is harvested. I don't know if it's harvest there, the word, but okay. And they do that all along their supply chain. It's like 17, 80 steps, I think. They're all documented with GPS location, with pictures, sometimes with a little text. You can even look where your t-shirt comes from. If you scan the QR code, you have an example there. And most importantly, they're future-proofing what they're doing. They're future-proofing the supply chain of their customers. As soon as they have to look into non-financial reporting or ESG data, they already have their entire supply chain collaborating with each other, sharing data. It's just one step further, and then again a step further, just like Robert Kaplan said, land and expand, take it small, and then expand. Okay. So this one is live, by the way. Second thing we're working on, it's Botanical water technologies. It's something entirely different. It's an English company. They have a patented technology to harvest the water from evaporization. That is the process in which from plants and vegetables, things like sugar or juices are made. And today that water is just thrown away. It's industrial waste. It's 3 trillion liter water. That's 1 million Olympic swimming pools. That is thrown away in regions like Australia, where they're not really having an abundance of water. And they built a technology that fits into a container, so you can position it in a supply chain where and when it is needed to cultivate, to really upcycle this water into drinkable water. That's Aqua Botanica. Into reusable water, for example, to water plants. But you can also buy water credits with it. which means you can lower your own ESG targets by just spending money, a bit like the carbon credits. For them, we are building an exchange because they want to connect supply and demand with each other. They want to have the certainty of a blockchain, trustworthy data, and also everything is pushed on the ledger. Just like with text tracer, apart from identity, everything is on the ledger. The quality of the water being harvested, the quantity, the purity, the temperature, everything is pushed there, and then supply and demand are matched with each other. And we can do that because we have the data and we are sure, as it's on the blockchain, that it's actually an order by someone, or when it is planned, to put a container in a supply chain and harvest the water. Because their ultimate goal is, and that's again the innovation part and process improvement. They don't want to transport the water for more than 200 kilometers, and we use AI there to match the data and to make sure that they reach their own goals. So, I hope these two examples show that if you put trustworthy data on an enterprise blockchain, because you don't have to share all the data you have, that it adds value through your ESG goals, through the things you do as a company, that it could help to improve your processes as well. This is a message from Deloitte. We also agree there, or well, I worked at Deloitte too, so I also agree that it's time to do something. We cannot just wait, and in Belgium we're quite specialized in waiting, to have somebody else solve it. It's time to step up, build our own solutions, focus on this legislation that is coming, look it up, Due Diligence Supply Chain Act, really quite a mouthful. It's going to change how we look into supply chains, how we track and trace data. We think it's time to start building and to jump on board. My name is Koen Vingerhoets. I'm blockchain evangelist at Fujitsu. We are a very purpose-driven company. We have a little side event tomorrow as well. With this QR code, you can still join us in Anderlecht, where we have people from enterprise blockchain solutions speaking in the afternoon. For example, Dirk Hermans from KBC, who launched their KBC coin or Kate coin over the weekend. So if you're interested in joining us tomorrow, there is lunch, there are drinks too. Feel free to come over, and thank you for your attention.